So it is 5:30 in the morning right now. I got up before 2 a.m., but for a very good reason. I am on my way to Austin, Texas for a symposium that's part of a psychiatry conference. And the symposium is on specifically metabolic psychiatry. And Metabolic Mind is bringing me down there to speak at it. And I'm so excited to learn more from so many leaders in this field. So I'm about to board my first plane, and I will be bringing you along with me for all of it. Okay, so I made it to Austin, and I think I didn't do the best intro. I was a little bit loopy at that hour of the morning and getting up so early. So I will do a better job of explaining what's going on. So there is a conference in Austin this week called the Society of Biological Psychiatry annual meeting. And basically, this is a really, really big, more research-focused psychiatric conference. And what's really exciting is that what I'm attending is a symposium that's being held the day before the conference, and it's being put on by Metabolic Mind and the Baszucki Group. And it's an entire symposium geared toward learning about metabolic psychiatry, which is really, really exciting. And I've been brought here to be a part of it as a part of their lived experience panel. I think part of why this feels so exciting is because the whole metabolic psychiatry movement has felt, for all intents and purposes, a little fringe for quite some time. Not quite some time, it's pretty new, but it's felt like it hasn't been totally accepted by, and it definitely actually isn't totally accepted by, mainstream psychiatry. So to have a whole day focused specifically on this metabolic psychiatry is pretty cool, and I think a really big step in the right direction. But yeah, travel went smoothly. I'm quite tired getting up at 1:40 in the morning and basically traveling all day. I had a little bit of a rest when I got in, and then I went out for a quick run, got ready, and going to go out now for a dinner with the other speakers for the event tomorrow. But hopefully I'll be able to get to bed early and be fresh for the symposium tomorrow. So the morning of the symposium, I got up early to go for a run along the river, which was very, very nice in terms of grounding myself for the day. I got ready, hopped on a scooter to head over to the hotel where the conference was taking place, picked up a coffee, and was ready to hear all about the exciting things that are happening in the world of metabolic psychiatry. There were talks from various neuroscientists and researchers ranging from talking about circadian rhythms and sleep and metabolism, talking about neurometabolic and neurometabolic control, talking about things like brain insulin sensitivity. There was a presentation on a study that was really kind of the first of its kind, looking at ketogenic interventions in depression in college-age students. And then another really groundbreaking study that was shared with us was using the ketogenic diet to treat anorexia nervosa. And then, of course, I was there as part of the lived experience panel that they incorporated into the event too, which was really, really cool. And I think that that's something that's really lacking from a lot of these psychiatric gatherings and whatnot, is really having people there sharing the lived experience aspect of it as well, and connecting the research to practical use and how it actually affects people. So it is the day after the symposium now, and I'm about to head to the airport to head home from this trip. And I think I did a pretty bad job of vlogging this trip. I was just very, very consumed with being really present and taking it all in, because, wow, I think going through this experience of using a medical intervention that is not widely used yet or even widely accepted as effective, it's felt, it's been mind-blowing actually how much it is changing my life and how effective it has been for me. And I think I've just been doing a lot of reflecting on the state of mental health care, kind of juxtaposed with this experience that I've gone through the last 4.5 months of going about treating my mental illness in a very, very different way from what I've been taught is the way to deal with it for the last decade plus, and the way that most people kind of accept as the way to treat mental illness. I think reflecting on that has felt overwhelming in terms of having experienced this better way of approaching psychiatric care and knowing that it is going to be a really, really big battle to change the entrenched systems that exist around treating psychiatric illness. And yeah, I think I've just been a little bit bogged down about how daunting that task of spreading information about how effective this treatment can be and trying to get more people to try it, trying to get more clinicians to use it in their practices with patients. I think that has felt overwhelming. But coming here and meeting the Metabolic Mind team, the Baszucki Group, it kind of blew my mind, the work that they're doing to try to change the mental health care system, really is what it comes down to. Trying to change best practices of psychiatric care for the better. It was amazing meeting them, and it was equally incredible to hear from researchers and clinicians who are moving the needle huge amounts in terms of our understandings of the effectiveness of this treatment. Dr. Guido Frank was one of the presenters who was sharing his results from his study on using the ketogenic diet to treat anorexia. And, that's been a big topic of concern on our channel, is people wondering or being concerned that following something like the ketogenic diet could trigger things like eating disorders. And they've been concerned about that for me too, because of my history with an eating disorder. Firsthand experience, I found that I've had kind of an opposite experience where it's kind of healed my relationship with food. And it was validating and extremely interesting to hear from him that he found very, very similar results in his clinical trial. He mentioned how difficult it's going to be to get people to completely change how they view treatment of these kinds of disorders. And I've talked briefly on this channel about how identity gets very woven into oftentimes people who are living with mental illness. Their mental illness becomes part of their identity. And that's happened for me as well too, where it becomes part of your conception of who you are. And so, we've explored a little bit on the channel how that can feel really challenging when, that is kind of challenged, and where maybe that doesn't need to be a part of your identity anymore through this medical intervention. And that can feel difficult to navigate. And he kind of drew my attention to how that could be playing out with clinicians as well, whereby this new medical intervention of metabolic therapies is coming into the discussion, and it's really asking clinicians to completely change their way of thinking about how to treat mental illnesses like this. And perhaps that is also challenging their identity in terms of, on some level, invalidating all the work they've done up to this point in terms of how they treat and help patients living with mental illness. And I thought that was really interesting, just in terms of, I've been really focused on the patient experience of identity being challenged, but there's also the element of adopting this new practice, challenging the identity of clinicians as well. So this is kind of rambly, but there's a lot of layers at play, kind of things we all need to go through in terms of hopefully being more open to trying this new method of treatment, which, the more I hear about and the more I go through myself, I am kind of convinced that this is where mental health care needs to go. And this is what is going to overhaul and change mental health care for the better. So again, I'm sorry this ended up being kind of a bad vlog, but I did want to share with you that this trip and hearing from people in this space was so incredibly motivating and inspiring, and has refueled my sense of duty or obligation to share how effective this intervention has been for me, and the science that is coming out around how effective it is for many other people as well. So I met some wonderful clinicians and researchers who have agreed to come on the channel to share their knowledge and information further. So stay tuned for those interviews. I'm really, really excited to share more about what's going on in kind of the science world of metabolic psychiatry. I again mentioned how inspired I am by the whole Metabolic Mind and Baszucki Group team who are working so hard to move the needle in this domain of, incorporating metabolic psychiatry more into common practice. And yeah, I'm really excited to help hopefully move the needle in terms of bringing metabolic psychiatry into more mainstream practice in psychiatric care. Thank you so much, Metabolic Mind and Baszucki Group, for bringing me on this trip and for valuing including lived experience in these science gatherings and research gatherings. I think that kind of speaks for itself in terms of where their values are in why this needs to be promoted, because it's actually affecting and improving lives of real people living with mental illness. Heading to the airport now, and we will get back to our regular content, but thank you for coming along on this little trip with me. And I hope that hearing about, movement that's happening in this sphere of increasing knowledge about metabolic psychiatry is inspiring for you to hear as well. And again, I cannot wait to have some of the clinicians who I learned from over the past few days onto our channel as well to share their wealth of knowledge with you all as well. And maybe before I wrap this video up, I'll quickly also acknowledge that I had a lot of anxiety about traveling while following medical keto. I had no idea what I was going to eat or how, my levels of ketones were going to play out and if I would be okay. But it's gone quite smoothly. I actually put on one of these continuous ketone monitors just to make sure I was on top of staying in ketosis, and it's been really helpful. I think I actually owe these guys an apology because, or maybe not an apology, maybe they fix things, but I've mentioned that the second week they become less effective, but that was my experience with the first batch that I ordered. And then this next batch that we just ordered has been really, really accurate the full 2 weeks. So perhaps I would actually recommend giving these a go. They've been super, super helpful. And yeah, so that was one thing that I did. I was going to go show you everything I packed food-wise, but I already packed it away. There's these things called keto bricks, which you can buy, but they're really expensive. And so Rob actually figured out how to make them ourselves. And so I packed like a ton of those, probably more than I could have even consumed in 3 days. Packed a lot of macadamia nuts, packed a lot of protein and keto bars, packed our peanut butter cups as a little snack. And yeah, I actually haven't really had to use too much of those. I hadn't actually gone to a restaurant before this trip while on medical keto. So this was the first time I've tried to order keto at a restaurant, and it really wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. The first restaurant that I went to was like incredible and so accommodating and made sure I knew everything that was in all of the dishes that I ate or ordered. And then, yeah, we got like Texas barbecue the second night, and yeah, it wasn't too bad. So I had a lot of anxiety about traveling while still maintaining medical keto diet-wise, but it wasn't too bad. So maybe that's encouraging too. With that, I will wrap this up. Thank you so much for watching this video, and as always, wishing you and your loved ones good health. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.